It had to happen. ये तो होना ही था. What? Well, we just had one monologue on the sanctions that China has imposed on the United States. Well, China didn't stop there. It also went ahead and imposed a bunch of sanctions against Taiwan. Somebody jokingly said that China is trying to cut off its own nose by imposing sanctions on Taiwan. Now, here is one very interesting sanction which I believe there is a problem with. What is the thing? It says Taiwan's chip manufacturing industry to be affected by Chinese mainland's export suspension. What did China suspend exports of to Taiwan? This article on chinadaily.com.cn says that Taiwan currently consumes 90 million metric tons of natural sand a year. This is used for semiconductor fab. And of these, 1/3 are from Chinese mainland. Wait a minute. So what this article is saying is that Taiwan is a importer of quartz sand. Let's see, what does Google tell us? So I Googled for the sand exporting countries. The number one sand exporter is United States. The number two is China. And then there are other countries, Germany, Malaysia, and so on and so forth. So if there is a problem of procuring sand from China, well, don't you think that United States would have already figured this out when they said that Nancy Pelosi will be landing in Taipei? So it's not a big deal. I don't think this is going to make much of an impact. The other interesting thing, there are two different sources that I looked at. One source said that Taiwan itself exports quartz sand. Why would a country that is a net exporter then import from China unless the Chinese quartz sand is so cheap that it is cheaper than using its own quartz sand? These are all a little bit of nuanced things. There may be some purity, there may be something else involved. Maybe the sand that China was providing Taiwan was more suited for making fabrication chips. See, what happens is when we say chip fabrication, right, what really happens in a fab such as the TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company? What happens? So you have a design. You are Qualcomm, you are Infosys, you are XYZ, you are 𝙒𝙖𝙩𝙦𝙤 chip designer. You give the design. What happens in a design? The design is something that you capture in a high-level language. It's called Verilog or VHDL. These are all different languages, just like C, Python, and so on. For software, you have design languages now to make your complicated chip. It could be a CPU chip, it could be some specialized chip, lots of different varieties. What you want to do is you want to capture your design. Then what happens is once the design is captured, then you would simulate the design, make sure that it is running at the rated frequency for which you are planning the chip for. If you are trying to make that thing run at 200 megahertz, you'll have to run all the simulations at 200 megahertz to make absolutely sure that your design is up to standards. Then what happens is there is something called as a verification. There will be a separate engineer called verification engineer who will verify your design according to the rules of the foundry to where you are going to give your design. Now these rules change from foundry to foundry, so there are variations there. You have to make absolutely sure of that. Once you have crossed that step, once your team is confident that the chip will work as specified, then what happens is typically, I'm not saying always, there is something called as a golden simulator that the fab itself gives. And now this software is not available to you at your desk. You may have to go to the fab's facilities and there you run your design one more time. And if that design passes those tests, and those tests sometimes will trip you up because they have a much stringent rules for many of the boundary conditions and so on and so forth. And once that passes, then what you do is that you sign off your design to the fab. In the fab, let's say your design is going to take 16 layers, 16 layers. What happens is they actually start working on your design, having had a certification from their own golden simulator that everything works fine, that this chip will work as devised by the original designer. Then what happens is they start growing silicon on a base wafer. And these are basically your design, and your design has 16 levels. So they will actually be physically growing one level, one layer at a time. Each layer could take 1 to 2 days. So if you are thinking about a 16 layer design, then from the time the thing goes into the process, you're talking about 16 times 2, 32 days for the design to come out. Now 32 days is a long time in design business. Sometimes what happens is, some people will say, wait a minute, I have some base wafers, base layers that may not change up to say layer 8. So you get started with the job and I'll give you my design after the 8th layer. So in other words, the chip designing company is still continuing to tweak its design even as the chip is being manufactured in the fab. And then when they reach that point, they say, okay, now here are the better enhancements, go with this, and the 9th layer onwards up to the 16th layer, some more magic happens. I mean, people are trying to squeeze every second out of this entire design cycle. That's what I'm trying to say. So in all these things, if a particular type of sand is more suited for a particular fab, then maybe that would make an impact. But it is really my gut feeling is that quartz sand is quartz sand. I mean, it's not much different. It happens, it's available on the coast when the beach washes up and the ocean hits the land. That's when the sand gets created. It also gets created on riverbeds and so on and so forth. So I don't think this is going to be a big deal. However, this is all theatrics in my opinion. I told you before the visit of Speaker Nancy Pelosi that these kind of things will happen. I think, this is my net observation, all these things are going to hurt China more than the country that it is trying to hurt. Thanks for watching. Please like, share and subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to click on the bell button for notifications. If you like our research, please consider donating using the super thanks button. Namaskar.